Hey, hey, we're here. And we're doing a thing. So, this is Tuesday, which is usually the day that we play our Wisconsin group and the games that we do there. But we are switching up our schedule here. So, there's a bunch of different things that I need to announce. The primary purpose of this video is going to be a recap of Inquisitors and all the stuff that happened in the past seasons. So we're coming back to Inquisitors, and that involves a schedule change. We're gonna be streaming on Saturday mornings now. Which, if that doesn't work for you to watch live anymore, I apologize. But at least you'll be able to catch it on YouTube, and all the stuff will still be going to YouTube as when the stream is all done and I put together the videos for all that stuff. But today we're going to be talking recap. So it has been a hot minute since we have done this game. So Inquisitors is the first campaign we ever streamed back in 2016. When we started this, okay, I guess this is a lie. Technically, David and I streamed a Burning Wheel show called But Tonight We Dance. But it never went anywhere. We ended up not finishing that one and played a few episodes. But Inquisitors is the first true show for this channel, and truly was the genesis of what this channel will become. And you probably know this because I've been doing the Inquisitors podcast, where I go back to the old recordings, polish them up, make them sound so much nicer than they used to, and then present them to you guys as a really cool kind of finished product with original music and bonus content and all that stuff. And I think I maybe overestimated my ability to get the podcasts out. I'm working on season 2 right now, getting that polished up, but it is nowhere near finished. And so we're here. We're doing Inquisitors again. We've kind of been circling back around and finishing up old campaigns that we hadn't tied up yet, right? We started Inquisitors, and then we stopped that, and then we started Elysian Road, and then we stopped that, and then we started Anno Domini, and then we stopped that, and then we started Hellbreaker Sequence. And around Hellbreaker Sequence, I was like, we need to finish things. So we finished Hellbreaker Sequence, went back, finished Anno Domini, went back, finished Elysian Road, and now we're here. Now we're here to finish Inquisitors. We're going to play this baby out to the end and give you the ending of the story. So, if you didn't want to listen through hours and hours of recordings, whether or not you've actually watched the show, or maybe you've just heard the first season in the podcast form and you don't really want to wade through all the terrible audio of the other seasons on YouTube, never fear. I am here to give you the recap that you deserve. So I was thinking of putting this together as a polished video with graphics and cool cuts and coherent pacing. As you can tell, I don't have coherent pacing for this video. But we're running out of time here. Inquisitors Season 4 is happening this Saturday. So it's crunch time. We got to get a bunch of stuff done and out there. We've been hard at work I've been making character sheets and getting videos released. I've been re-releasing the season 1 of Inquisitors, the kind of final remastered versions of that on YouTube. And we've been hard at work making sure the characters have their beliefs and their instincts, and we know what the starting situation is going to be. We've been really ironing out a lot of the details over the last couple of weeks once we knew that we were going to jump back into Inquisitors. And our cast, I guess one thing I'll announce here before I get into this script that I've written out, which will not be as coherent as as it would have been if I had made this a scripted video, and edited it and whatnot. This is just a live stream now because I was like, I need to get this out there for the people. I need this to be a video that people can reference if they want to know what happened in Crow Inquisitors, but I can't spend more time on it than a live stream. So that's what we're going to get. So, oh yeah, I was going to announce the cast. So, we're going to be returning with obviously Connor, David, and Jared, our core group now. And Theo, Adam, will be joining us to play Theo. So that'll be really fun. We're super excited to have him back. And yeah, we are ready to rock and roll with those characters. Right, so Trevor won't be returning as Sergio, and Josh won't be returning as Antonius because of life things. But we will be returning to the story of Crow Inquisitors, and Antonius is still there, Sergio is still there. Those characters are still having an influence on the setting, and there'll be lots of fun stuff. But they're now NPCs in my hand. Anyway, without further ado, I'll probably try to make a timestamp on this video for all the different sections. You can skip ahead to the relevant points here, but and I still have a cough, so I'm muting myself every once in a while here while I record this. But we are going to, I'm going to read off this script. We are going to give you the recap. So I'm going to start off with a like an introduction to the show and the characters if you're like completely unfamiliar with Crow Inquisitors. So this would be a good place to start if you want to watch the show when it starts coming out, but don't know anything about what we're talking about. Listen to the intro. And then honestly, I would suggest going and listening to the Crow Inquisitors podcast, where I converted season 1 into a really polished product. I guarantee you'll have a blast with that. Those are shorter, more condensed episodes. And at the very least, you'll get a real sense for the characters. And then you can come back to this video, listen back through the other seasons and get caught up there. If you really would rather just watch everything, feel free. Or if you'd rather just watch the recap video, feel free. I'm just offering you options here. We want to make sure that you guys can watch along with Crow Inquisitors and still be engaged in it, because it has been years upon years since we finished playing Crow Inquisitors Season 3 in 2018. So, I mean, it's been like almost 5 years since then, right? So like no one's gonna remember everything. I had to listen through the whole show to remember everything, right? So we just want to make sure that you're caught up and ready to go with all that stuff. I'm just gonna tweak some of this. Maybe I won't. I don't know. It seems like I'm peaking or something, but I think it's fine. I'll just try to talk at a more reasonable pace, reasonable volume here. Still working out some of the new OBS features that I'm fiddling with to make sure the streams sound as nice as can be. Okay, let's jump into it. Here is the Crow Inquisitors recap, starting with the introduction to the game itself. Crow Inquisitors is an actual play RPG show about exonerated criminals doing the dirty work of a corrupt church. Or at least, that's how it began. As we gear up for a long overdue return to the world of Serragon and the story of the Crow Inquisitors, let's recall the events that have transpired to lead us to our 4th season. We'll begin with some introductions to both the setting and the characters. If you're already familiar with these, feel free to skip ahead to the recap. Crow Inquisitors takes place in the world of Serragon, a fantasy world of powerful magic, scheming demons, and ancient prophecies. Specifically, the story is centered on the kingdom of Ceran, a coastal nation of warm grasslands, forests, and hills. Ceran is led by the high priest of the Church of Ceran, a powerful and firm religion modeled after the medieval Roman Catholic Church. Over the centuries, the church has become corrupt, and its machinations are one of the focuses of the game. Our characters are criminals, accused and convicted of crimes punishable by death, but freed under the condition that they swear fealty to the church. They become Crow Inquisitors, expendable agents for the church, charged with weeding out heresy and other challenges to the church's authority. They are bound to this pledge by a magical curse, placed on them under the head Inquisitor, Vadafray's orders. If they disobey, they will be killed by the curse. First, we have Cantarius Tasiki, a gruff and silent taskmaster and tinkerer, the son of a Serrano woman and a Taconi man. The Taconi are neighbors of the Serrano, with a culture similar to that of Imperial Japan. Basically, they're an island archipelago, kind of south of Ceran. I'm going to be inserting some comments because I didn't have a chance to polish this as tightly as I would have liked. Cantarius has the magic known as the sensory discipline, which allows him to use his senses in ways beyond normal human limits. Cantarius was charged with treason when a building he had overseen the construction of collapsed on the Prince of Ceran. As a side note, Ceran is primarily led by the church, but technically a secular government does exist. Secondly, we have the twins, Delin and Alphonse, sons of the High Priest of Ceran, and thus functionally royalty. Delin is a holy knight of Ceran, basically a paladin, and wields his sword and his knowledge of doctrine with equal efficiency. Delin was charged with the murder of a bishop after the Holy Knight found out that his sister, the wife of said bishop, was being abused by the man. Alphonse, his twin, is a courtier and serial philanderer, and has caused scandal after scandal in the religious capital of the country, and the home of our characters, Lucerta. Alphonse's skill with words is nearly the equal of his brother's skill with a sword. Alphonse was charged with many crimes when he was finally brought to face justice, including multiple counts of adultery, public drunkenness, indecent exposure, and associating with criminals. The last and most heinous of his crimes, however, was incest. While Delin was avenging their sister, Alphonse was sleeping with her. There's also Antonius Ram, the master smith turned criminal. He was originally thrown in prison based on a false accusation from a nobleman, and spent the next few years of his life as a jailbreaker, alternatively getting thrown in and breaking out of prisons while trying to clear his name. This escalated to the murder of guards, finally leading the legal system to pronounce him worthy of death. As our characters begin their journey, they meet other characters, such as Theo, another member of the ranks of the Inquisitors, though inducted earlier than them, a nobleman turned gladiator turned murderer, obsessed with returning his wife from death. He made a deal with the goddess Narani, kill for her, and Narani would return his wife back to him. Narani is the goddess of marriage and water. Specifically, she's considered a patron saint in the Serrano religion, not a goddess per se. They worship one god, kind of capital G, referred to as the Great God. Again, medieval Roman Catholic Church, kind of. Like it. Theo joins their mission to root out heretics and he brings his own baggage along with him. Lastly, we have Sergio Ton, Delin and Alphonse's uncle, who has returned from an extended pilgrimage to the Teco archipelago with new ideas and skills. He seeks to put them to use, reforming the church and driving out its corruption. He is not a criminal himself, but joins the characters halfway through Season 1, charged by the church with guiding and reining them in. All right, with introductions out of the way, let's give you a recap of the show's events so far. So this is why I'm doing this as a live stream, because otherwise I'd have to edit out all of these mistakes. I'm just going to vomit it all out, and y'all can listen to it. All right, so we have Season 1. In the first season of Crow Inquisitors, after our characters were exonerated and recruited as Crow Inquisitors, they headed off to the village of Estel, where a heretical cult was said to be growing. After causing trouble at a hostel on the way, they were joined by Theo, and the 5 Crow Inquisitors arrived at the village, ready to accomplish their task. Shortly after their arrival, however, chaos ensued. The group split up, with Delin seeking answers from the mayor and the priest of Estel, while the others stretched for information in the marketplace and taverns. When Cantarius discovered that the local abbess was flirting with unorthodox behavior, the group, minus Delin, assumed that she must be the ringleader of the cult they were sent to find. Alphonse and Theo, fearing that the Crow Inquisitors would simply descend on the abbey and slaughter its residents, fled to warn the abbess of the danger. Theo was told by the goddess Narani to kill the abbess. Her name is Achia True, by the way. But he refused to do so upon seeing that she looked just like his late wife. Quickly thereafter, it turned out, however, the cult was not centered at the Abbey after all, as the Abbey was attacked by the cult, who labeled themselves the Friends of the One. Now, that name I don't think ever got said on screen in Season 1, but after the fact, that's what I've named them, just to delineate them properly. Meanwhile, Cantarius and Antonius took a detour to attempt to destroy Cantarius' staff, a strange magical artifact that the man had been carrying with him for many years. When it poured forth green smoke and caught the local smith's daughter in its poison, Antonius berated Cantarius for his hastiness and took the smith, August Nov, and his family to the Abbey to seek for healing for their daughter. Cantarius followed, ashamed. Delin, tracking down the cult in his own manner, became suspicious of the mayor, Ishro Nav, and his staff, but finally tracked down the Friends of the One himself. After subduing a Teconi woman named Yuma and chasing off another cult member named Opage Non, a local drunk, the other characters also came across this guy. He was a fun NPC to play in Season 1. After he did these things, Delin found his way to the Abbey as well, where the attack by the cult on the nuns was well underway. Delin found Antonius in the courtyard of the Abbey and helped him fight off some cultists before joining up with him to search out the rest of the Crone Inquisitors. They found Alphonse and Theo helping the nuns escape from the Abbey and reach the relative safety of a nearby lighthouse. And Antonius ushered the Nov family forward to get help for their daughter Maddie, who was taking a turn for the worse. Meanwhile, Cantarius was chasing down the Friends of the One and had cornered them when Sergio Ton appeared, sent after them by the church. The pair subdued the cultists, and then Delin and Alphonse joined them. Meanwhile, back at the lighthouse, Theo was told by the goddess Narani to kill Maddie, the smith's daughter, who was dying from the green-smoked poison. He refused, and she died, pouring forth green smoke as she passed. Theo and Antonius ushered everyone out of the lighthouse to keep everyone from being poisoned themselves, but Maddie's parents refused to leave her side, and died there. After rounding up the cultists and interrogating them, guards from Estel burst into the Abbey and attempted to arrest the Crone Inquisitors, Cantarius, Delin, Alphonse, and Sergio specifically, on the mayor's orders. After talking them down, they determined that the mayor needed to be dealt with. Cantarius decided to take matters into his own hands and headed out to deal with the mayor himself, distraught from Maddie's death. The rest of the Crone Inquisitors followed, trying to stop him before he acted rashly. After breaking inside the mayor's compound, Cantarius was confronted by Liren, one of the mayor's staff, and stabbed by the man. When the rest of the Crone Inquisitors showed up, Liren tried to lie about his involvement in the attack, and so Delin subdued and arrested him. Alphonse managed to convince the mayor's guard to turn against him, and so Itro was arrested as well. In the confusion, Cantarius misplaced his staff. I know that I'm using the word staff in two different senses here, but hopefully you were confused. After interrogating the cultists further and running into a wall, proverbially, the Inquisitors wondered if there were any more cultists to find. Cantarius overheard Itro and Liren, who were also in prison, talking about some sort of ritual, and the group attempted to figure out what that could mean. Alphonse and Theo had a conversation, and Alphonse became a follower of Narani by the end of it, with Theo finally free of his bond to Narani. They both disappeared shortly thereafter, heading to the Abbey. The group also ransacked the mayor's house looking for evidence, and found a strange pocket mirror. A falcon flew into the house and tried to steal it from Antonius, but the man chased it off. Meanwhile, the doctor who was caring for Cantarius' wound seemed to show symptoms of the same disease that had taken Maddie, and so Cantarius urged the man to kill himself to stop the spread. The doctor didn't listen at first, but soon returned to Cantarius. The disease progressed. He begged for death, and Delin gave it to him, before the group left to try to ensure the disease wouldn't spread. Basically, he went back, they kind of retraced the doctor's steps and tried to make sure that anyone he had gone into contact with was not going to spread it to anyone else. Instead, they found a strange cloaked man who stabbed Sergio before fleeing to the Abbey. Upon arriving at the Abbey, chasing down the cloaked figure, Delin found the abbess, as well as a foreign man, a soldier from Shoei, the neighboring kingdoms of Ceran, and they fought. Antonius managed to corner the cloaked figure they had been chasing, and the two of them fought with knives. Apparently, Alphonse and Theo had been captured, for Antonius also discovered them, bound and gagged with the man. Cantarius arrived to help Delin, and the two of them subdued the swordsman, a man named Min, as well as the abbess, Aetia True. Antonius and Theo subdued the cloaked man, a red-haired man named Lagarde. After some interrogation of Aetia and Lagarde, they discovered that there was a second group working in Estel, right? So they thought that they were like tracking down the last of the cultists, but it turned out that the mayor, the abbess, and these other mysterious figures were actually a second organization called the Order, a mysterious organization. They had stolen Cantarius' quarterstaff and abducted Alphonse and Theo in an attempt to perform a ritual to find a treasure that would, in their words, help them save the world. The Crow Inquisitors eventually agreed to let them use the staff, the mirror that Antonius had found, and Alphonse to perform the ritual. And a door opened in the abbey, leading to a hidden chamber that held a glowing orb. Alphonse touched the orb and gained magic. Bear with me as I cough here. In the aftermath of the events of the season, the heretics were executed, except for the woman Yuma, who Delin took on as a personal servant in order to save her from death. Lagarde was also executed, but Min and Aetia were imprisoned as the validity of their mysterious mission was considered. On orders from the church, the Crow Inquisitors stayed in Estel for a few months, recovering. Also, at one point, Delin sends a letter back to the Crow Inquisitors, or not the actual Inquisitors, not the Crow Inquisitors, the Inquisition, and kind of reports on what they've been doing and leaves out the Order from his report. So they're trying to keep that from the Inquisition and trying to figure that out on their own, basically. In this time that they spend recovering, Delin trained with Yuma, and the two became close. Cantarius trained his mind with a Taconi monk in town. Alphonse went to a nearby estate to train with his new magic, courtesy of a noblewoman friend of his, Virelia. And lastly, Antonia, Sergio, and Theo helped Estel and practiced their respective skills. At the end of 3 months, the group returned to Lucerta for further orders. All right, so then we get into Season 2. So Season 2, our characters return to the city of Lucerta, and the city is obviously reeling from a massive riot. A new cult, known as the Cult of the Dreamers, has recently rebelled against the church and only barely been beaten back. They are still a threat, and the church has brought the Crow Inquisitors in to deal with them. After a short meeting with the Inquisitors, they are given leave to attend to any personal business in Lucerta before heading out to stop the cult. During this time, Alphonse bargains with Norani to remove the Crow Inquisitor curse from both him and Delin, trading his soul and the orb he acquired from the ritual in Estel in the process. He then frees Min and Aetia from custody, the Order agents, and goes to a woman who leads a crime syndicate in Lucerta, Gialina Hux, and makes a deal with her to get Aetia out of the city. Alphonse also convinces Min to get an army from the Order and come back to help them overthrow the church. Meanwhile, Delin confronts his sister about her relationship with Alphonse, and she admits that it was consensual. Delin leaves his sword in her room and storms off. Delin finds out that Maria, a foreign woman from the desert region of Nazreen to the north, and Delin's lover, has been forced to join the church, making their relationship forbidden. He recruits an old mentor of his, Roriano, to help him get Maria out of the church hierarchy, and they work together to counter Bishop Armando Cole and free Maria from her obligations. Yuma meets Maria, and it becomes clear to everyone except Delin that he's caught in a love triangle. Alphonse reunites with Ipina and lets her know that they can't be in a relationship. She is distraught and tries to kill herself with Delin's sword before Alphonse stops her. Alphonse then takes Delin's sword and convinces a passing servant girl named Damiana Sant, I need to write that in my notes here, to return the sword to him, to Delin. Antonius returns to his shop to discover a friend from the Smiths Guild has been running it in his absence, and more than that, he's been sleeping with his wife. Antonius kills the man and flees. Theo heads off into the city to get information on the Cult of Dreamers. He discovers that Iris, his cousin, has gotten mixed up in the cult. There's also kind of like a whole subplot thing that happens in our kind of side campaign to Crow Inquisitors called Year of Raging Winds. And in that, basically, a group of characters that we kind of played for a little while just as a fun side thing eventually join a cult. And this cult eventually becomes the Cult of the Dreamers. So the information, the stuff that happens in that isn't particularly relevant to Crow Inquisitors. It's enough to know what I just told you. But if you are interested, that is actually edited and on the Crow Inquisitors podcast as like a polished product. So that's a fun thing to listen to as well. And in that, sorry, I forgot the point that I was making. In that, Iris is a character that is played. So he's from that. Sergio meets with Vada, the head of the Inquisition, and is given an offer. Vada wants Sergio to be the new High Priest of Ceran. The group reconvenes, but Alphonse is missing. They move forward with a plan to infiltrate the cult and end up tracking down Guido Sen, a nobleman who recently inherited the estate after his brother died. The Sen family has been Dreamer sympathizers, and Guido confirms this. Antonius reveals that Guido was the man who got him put in prison originally, but Delin manages to come to an agreement with Guido to get them into the cult. Guido sets it up as a recruitment. So they wait for this recruitment. Antonius is thrown into prison after the group disperses briefly before this recruitment. This meeting with the cult they're going to do. Delin and Kentarius, as well as Marya and Yuma, meet with Gen, who is another one of the characters from The Year of Rage Wins. But yeah, basically just a leader of the cult. That's all you need to know. In a pretense of joining the cult, right? So they're pretending that they're going to do this. And Alphonse arrives wearing golden armor, right? So he's been absent for a while, and then he kind of shows up randomly. They treat with Gen, and he agrees to consider their joining the cult. Afterwards, Delin and Alphonse reconcile, and Delin tells him to keep his sword. Vada pressures Sergio to agree to usurping the High Priest's claim, and when he waffles, instead going to Delin with the offer. That was worded weirdly. So Vada pressures Sergio to agree to usurping the High Priest's claim, right? So he wants him to become the High Priest. And when Sergio waffles, Vada instead goes to Delin with the offer. This makes Sergio accept, right? He's like, okay, I can't let Delin do this. I need to do this. So then after this, Delin gets attacked by Armando Cole's assassins. Theo and Kentarius make a blood pact to trust each other. But Theo, in the meantime, makes secret deals with Elon, the High Priest of Ceran, behind the scenes. So that's fun. I need to change this noise gate. I think it's too loud. Let me try this. Let's try that. It's much easier to do streams with other people when you have a cough like this, because then they can just talk for a little bit, and then you get your cough out. Let's see here. Yeah. Alphonse, Delin, and Kentarius. Man, why is it peaking so much? I don't know what's going on, guys. This feels really weird. I'm trying to get it to compress properly. Testing. Well, hopefully that doesn't sound terrible. I guess I'll just keep trying to modify my voice here. Oh, I chose the wrong thing. That wasn't what I wanted to do. Here we go. All right. That's what I was trying to do. That will probably be better. Okay. Back to the recap. Alphonse, Delin, and Kentarius go to the initiation into the cult of the Dreamers in the evening. Jontos tries to poison Yuma and Marya in the initiation ritual, handing out poisoned bread to those he deems unworthy. Delin attacks him and stabs him through the throat, and then Gen shows up and a fight breaks out. Delin ends up killing Gen. Yeah, actually, that's a note. Jontos is another one of the characters from Year of Rage and Win, but the only thing that we really need to know about him is he's kind of like the high priest of the Dreamer. So the Dreamer is like the main cult figure here, and all these other named characters are kind of like his figureheads. So Delin ends up killing Gen. Alphonse orates to the gathered initiates in order to form a new cult, the cult of the, well, I guess it's not named that yet, but a new cult. And eventually, the entire Wharf District goes up in flames as members take sides. The district splits in half between the old Dreamers still following Winter and the new cult following Delin and Alphonse. In the fighting, Jontos' dying body is carried back to Winter and healed back to the Dreamer. That night, when everything is settled down, Yuma finally has it out with Delin. and gets him to admit out loud that he doesn't have feelings for her. She leaves, but gets attacked by the Cult of the Dreamers before she can exit Lucerta, and is instead captured by Jontos. So she's captured by the Dreamers when she tries to leave. During these events, Antonius gets released from prison by the Inquisitors, and he, Theo, and Sergio get caught up in the chaos in the Wharf District. Antonius stops his son Adelmo from getting killed in the fighting, and discovers that his son and his wife have joined the Cult of the Dreamers. The next day, Alphonse finds Yuma's trail and discovers that she has been taken to the new base of the Cult of the Dreamers. Alphonse makes a deal with the Dreamer himself. Alphonse will hand over the magical artifacts he has, such as the mirror used in the ritual and the orb he acquired from said ritual, in exchange for Yuma. The Dreamer agrees, and Alphonse leaves with Yuma. Everyone begins discussing what the next move is, and Alphonse and Yuma show up. Alphonse explaining that the meeting Alphonse explains the meeting he had with the Dreamer. Cantarius figures out that the Dreamer is his son, Winter. So this was kind of an ongoing subplot for a while now. We knew that Cantarius's son was like possessed by a demon, and there's a whole thing there. That's why his staff was like this magical artifact. But I cut out some of the like revelations of that throughout the game, or throughout this script, just for brevity's sake. There's a lot of little stuff like that I had to cut out for time. So once Cantarius is given a description of the Dreamer, of the leader of this cult, he realizes, oh, this is my son. They all sit down to do research on demonology, to try to figure out a way to kill the demon and not Winter, and settle on a plan to have Cantarius offer himself up as a vessel, and then kill himself, leaving Winter free of the demon. They make further preparations for the meeting, such as alchemist's fire, barricades, and traps leading to the fortress, and then set up a meter with Winter and the Dreamers in the square with the fountain for all this to go down in. So it's a square in the Wharf District with a fountain where all this goes down. Now, the Dreamers construct a platform in the square for this meeting. Delin and Cantarius have a conversation about hell and eternal destiny, with Delin telling Cantarius that giving up his life for another will probably send him to heaven, as long as he does it in faith. Cantarius seems set on hell, and Delin decides he wants to save Cantarius. The group discusses who will die to save Winter, with Theo offering himself up, since Cantarius needs to live for his son. Finally, it is determined that the plan is to isolate Winter after hell breaks loose and force him to bind to a useless object. So they kind of figured out some like demon stuff here, and they were like, so demons have to bind to things. Sometimes it's to objects like Cantarius' staff, or some other object, or a person. But if we can get him to force him to bind to a useless object, if we can like corner him and force him to do this, then we might be able to save Winter. So Alphonse tries to get the orb he traded back from Narani, and fails to do so, right? He had promised Winter this, or the Dreamer this, and Narani had it the whole time because he'd already traded it away. So he was trying to get it back to be able to do that, and that didn't work. And then the meeting happens, and Alphonse convinces the crowd to side against Winter after like a cool Dulawit scene that we did. Delin kills Jontos, but Iris seems swayed. Winter says that the cult is theirs and tries to make a break for it, but at that moment, the Holy Knights, called in by the High Priest of Ceran, Delin and Alphonse's father, from the desert region of Nazreen to place the city under martial law, show up, right? So it's a weirdly worded sentence, but the Holy Knights have been in this like desert region in the north of Ceran for a long time, kind of doing some crusading. There's some natives there that are kind of like Persian in culture. And, they're trying to convert by the sword, as it were, up there. And the High Priest of Ceran, after seeing all the stuff that's happening with the cult, is like, we need to call the Holy Knights back so that we can place the city under martial law. He hasn't told anyone about this. And so they show up, right? The Holy Knights show up right as they're about to have this victory with Winter. And then everything goes crazy. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Sergio is meeting with Vada to overthrow Elon, the High Priest. Vada wants a violent coup, but Sergio manages to convince him to do it his way first. Sergio has Ipina, Delin and Alphonse's sister, technically Sergio's niece, right? Sergio has Ipina set up a clandestine ambush for Elon. Sergio also finds a former holy knight named Averio, an old student of his, for backup in the coming situation. He'll be an important character in season 4. They ambush Elon when Ipana gets him alone to tell him she's pregnant. And it turns out that it's not just a pretense. She actually is pregnant, right? She was trying to set up this like clandestine ambush by telling her father, like, oh, you need to come. I have to tell you a secret. Like, this is something I can't share in front of anyone else. And, there was a pretense to get this ambush set up, but turns out the news she shares with him to get him here is true. She is pregnant with Alphonse's child, as if the family couldn't get any more messed up. So Elon knocks her over in anger, and then Vada, Sergio, the twin Inquisitors, who I haven't mentioned here, but there's also twin Inquisitors who are part of the Inquisition as well. Denzio and Lidio Sav. They are going to be characters in season 4 as well, I imagine. But then Averio also, and then the Inquisitorial Guard. They all burst in to confront the High Priest, Elon. Sergio and Elon do a duel of wits and settle on a compromise where Elon will work with Sergio, but Vada refuses the deal, right? He wants Elon to have no control. Sergio takes Vada into the other room and murders him, and then returns and intimidates the guard and the Inquisitors into joining him. He demands his brother step down, and Elon does not object. Sergio storms into the Council of Bishops with a signet ring and has them make him High Priest of Ceran, right? He tried to do this peacefully, and then something snapped at him, and he decided, okay, Dictator Pope, that's what's happening. Meanwhile, the Holy Knights in the Wharf District charge. The crowd scatters, and Kentarius and Iris grab Winter and take him to the fortress, while Delin, Alphonse, and Antonius get stuck in the crowd. Delin and Alphonse manage to save themselves and Yuma and Maria and escape back to the fortress, while Antonius gets cornered by a Holy Knight and stabbed, left for dead. Theo is ensuring everyone gets to safety and the traps go off, but he ends up outside the fortress himself. He goes back to Sergio to try to call off the knights, and Sergio is in the middle of declaring himself High Priest. Quickly thereafter, he sends a letter to the Holy Knights, Sergio does, and to Constantino, the priest whose magic was originally responsible for the curse on the Crow Inquisitors, basically to tell him to get the curse removed, right? So Theo comes there with two things he needs to tell Sergio, like, call off the Holy Knight since you're in charge now, and also, can you get this stupid curse off us? We need to get it removed. But it turns out that Theo has been making deals with Elon in secret, the High Priest, because Constantino, this priest who has this magic, confronts Theo on it when he's removing the curse, congratulating him on playing both sides and still coming out on top. Apparently, Theo has had his curse removed for some time, but Antonius, the last of the Inquisitors with the curse, gets it taken off. Oh, I guess Antonius and Kentarius still had it at that point. Yeah. All right, here we go. Let's see, what else we got? So at the fortress, this fortress that they're holding against, I don't think I mentioned this actually previously in this write-up. So there's a fortress in the Wharf District that Alphonse and Delin and their new cult have kind of retreated to defend against, originally the other part of the cult, but now against the Holy Knights as well. An initial siege does not go favorably for the Knights. All right, so they try to break down the walls and break down the gate and stuff, and the Knights end up falling back. And then Kentarius has a confrontation with Winter, and Winter and the demon inside Winter tries to threaten his son, but Kentarius just leaves, and his son is just spasming in pain, and Kentarius is like, nope, you can't trick me into doing something rash. And then Delin, Alphonse, and Kentarius head out into the streets looking for Antonius because he doesn't show up. And they find him bleeding out alongside Ilia Ram, his wife, who's also wounded and just kind of found her way to Antonius. They are both taken back to the fortress, and Alphonse convinces Winter to heal them because Winter has a magic that allows him to heal. Alphonse begins to be taken over by the demon inside. Sorry, let me read this again. Alphonse begins to be taken over by the demon inside the Dreamer, but Antonius stops him by killing Winter. They manage to keep the details of Winter's death from Kentarius, right? So I'm using the Dreamer and Winter interchangeably, right? They're the same person, just in case that was confusing. It's just his title. And then Kentarius goes to the top of the tower on the Wharf District Fortress, finds Antonius there. It turns out they were both going to kill themselves. They both came up to the top of this tower to do so, but they end up talking each other out of it because they find each other there. The Knights attack again, but get repelled. Things still look hopeless as the group is surrounded, and it's at that moment that Alphonse gets a message that says the Order isn't coming with the army they promised. And so they're like, okay, well, things aren't going to get better So then Alphonse decides to make a speech inspiring everyone to charge the fleeing knights, right? So the knights are making a retreat, and he's just like, we need to flee, we need to jump off these walls and just charge the holy knights. That's their only chance here. Dellen decides to lead the charge and spends a deeds point to use white dice to defeat the knights, right? He already had a gray shade sword, and he ends up white shading it. And if you don't know what that means, then it's a Burning Wheel term. You'll figure it out eventually. And then the cultists are all behind him, right, charging. The knights surrender not long into the battle, given the amount of dice he had to work with, and Dellen kills the lead holy knight. The rest follow him at that point. At the end of the season here, the characters recover and help rebuild Lucerta, and then decide what to do with the cultists. Kentarius, Antonius, and Theo will take them into the desert of Nazreen to teach them how to be moral individuals, helping people now that the holy knights are gone from that region. Right, so they still had this cult. Their original plan was to take the cult and like attack the church, and then hopefully get the cult killed in the process of like taking down the corrupt church. But Sergio already took control of the church, so they didn't have any need for that anymore. But the cult still is around, and they still need to deal with the cult, or else they're going to cause problems. So Kentarius, Antonius, and Theo all volunteer to take them into the desert and like teach them better than the Dreamer did. At the very end of the season here, Dellen gives Kentarius the Holy Scriptures of Ceran, the like original text that the religion is based off of. He also lets Alphonse keep his sword, and he proposes to Maria, his lover. Alphonse says goodbye to Ipina, realizes she's pregnant with his child, but doesn't say anything, and just leaves. Yuma leaves with Alphonse, and they wander around and to atone for Alphonse's sins and to do heroics, right? So Alphonse wants to go out and be a folk hero. He's like, I've done a whole bunch of crap. I need to like redeem myself. And Yuma decides to come with him. And then we get to season 3. So, season 3. For the next 2 years, so we do a 2 years time skip between season 3 and season 2 and season 3. So for the next 2 years, our characters change. Alphonse tries to become a folk hero in the countryside of Ceran and fails, turning to a swords master to become a skilled warrior. Sergio and Dellen rebuild the church and Ceran in general. Kentarius, Antonius, and Theo train the new crew and Crow Inquisitors in the desert. Ipina bears Alphonse's child. Dellen and Averio both worry about Sergio changing and growing more unstable. Dellen gets married. During the ceremony, Min shows up carrying an artifact. He pleads for help, and Order agents from Shoei are behind him. Dellen fights them, takes the artifact, gets the potential discipline, and then kills the leader of the Order agents, a Shoei prince, which sparks a war. And you can find out more about that whole situation with the bonus episode I released to kick off season 4. Alphonse continues to train and acquires more magic, as well as other wises and skills. Shoei, and a kingdom modeled after medieval China, goes to war with Ceran over the Order incident, and Dellen fights in that war. Sergio continues to dig into the Order and demonology, getting a tighter hold over the church and letting the people run loose. He also tries to build up the secular government of Ceran. Then we pick up with the events in the desert of Nazreen, to the north of Ceran, where the Holy Knights of Ceran used to do their crusading. We follow Kentarius, Antonius, and Theo as they lead the new Crow Inquisitors, a ragtag band of cultists become desert warriors who try to right wrongs. This is our season 3 kind of premise, right? So Alphonse and Dellen kind of were off doing their own thing in the background, and we focused on Kentarius, Antonius, and Theo in the desert. Other characters join the story, such as the eccentric wizard Siegfried, the merchant lord Caspian Goldvein, and the barbarian soldier Ulrich. Right, because Jared, David, and Josh weren't playing their characters anymore, so they decided to make new ones for the season. In the months leading up to the start of the season, Kentarius and the new Crow Inquisitors stop a pedophile tyrant in the desert and make a name for themselves. Siegfried joins the Crow Inquisitors as a surgeon and medicine man. The Crow Inquisitors find out that Caspian Goldvein, who now owns the town of Whitesea, in this region, has been burning the oases near the town to force commerce to Whitesea. The new Crow Inquisitors make their way to Whitesea to stop him, and that's where we pick up the events of the next season. So all that's kind of background. So we start off the season proper with the episodes we did with Caspian Goldvein, a moneylender turned local warlord who uses an army of mercenaries to keep the town of Whitesea into check. There are Serrano lords who object to his claim over White Sea and try to work against him, but Caspian deals with these objections with a former holy knight, Torin, and his mercenaries. Sends them to deal with it. Whew. Caspian also deals with multiple assassination attempts, and he does so with composure. He's used to that. Meanwhile, the Crow Inquisitors are meeting for a trial. Cantarius Tasaki convicts a rapist, Raiden, in the Crow Inquisitors' camp, sentencing him to castration and servitude. So he kind of comes alongside Cantarius, and Cantarius seeks to redeem the man, basically by making him a servant and teaching him better. Meanwhile, Siegfried deals with a local witch, the woman Ludwita, who's part of the Dreamer, the new cult here, the new Crow Inquisitors, who has stolen his alchemy tools. Siegfried, along with his meerkat familiar Pookie, again, crazy character as a herd of meerkats, takes the alchemy tools back easily, but earns the ire of Ludwita. There's kind of a rivalry that develops between these two. Caspian is awoken to news that the Crow Inquisitors are in the area. Caspian demotes the officer who failed to give us enough notice of this and promotes another, Ulrich. Theo has an encounter with Fereshte, goddess of wind and war, and she pushes him to seek her priestesses. Right, so Theo kind of gave up on Narani, and now a different goddess, the goddess of Nazreen, reaches out to him. The leaders of both the Crow Inquisitors and the town of Whitesea meet and discuss a deal, both for food and for shelter in Whitesea for the time being. Iris, who is now leading a part of the cult that rejects Cantarius' rule, makes an offer to work for Caspian. Caspian accepts, but tells Ulrich to keep an eye on Iris. So one quick comment I'll have to make there. So basically, we set up season 3 with Cantarius in charge of this cult that they let out into the desert. But Iris, right, this figurehead from the old cult that they managed to sway to the new cult. Iris has decided that like Del and Alphonse are cool, right? They're the people who started this new cult. But Cantarius is just a trial, right? He's not a true leader of the cult, and so Iris should be the new leader. So there's kind of some tension between those two there, which is the main thrust of the season. Don't worry about me, I'm just dying. Let's see, what else we got? So, Iris makes an offer to work for Caspian. Caspian accepts, but tells Ulrich to keep an eye on Iris. Siegfried and Caspian, who have a previous history, have a candid conversation about making Caspian into a living gold being using Siegfried's magic. So, basically, this wizard, played by Jared, is going to make Caspian, played by David, into pure gold, but still able to move around and do stuff. Meanwhile, Ulrich befriends Iris and sets off with them to get them to attack Ero, a Serrano lord who's been troubling Caspian, the one we mentioned earlier. Cantarius handles some camp disputes, working on redeeming Raiden, as well as dealing with Ludwita and her husband Vikam in their troublemaking. Caspian hires a surgeon, a woman named Ivana, to help Siegfried with his mission to turn Caspian into a golden god, basically. Theo visits the temple of Fereshte to join their ranks. He meets with the matriarch and gets inducted into the temple. Siegfried meets up with Ivana, the surgeon Caspian hired to help him, and they attempt to give sentience to a meerkat. They succeed, but Mirfried, the meerkat in question, becomes an evil super genius. Theo prays to Fereshte for guidance and decides once and for all that he doesn't want his wife back, while Fereshte pushes him to find a purpose. Meanwhile, Caspian is hiring a bartender to bring a bunch of strong alcohol for Gwyn's birthday party, which is coming up. Gwyn being his... So this is one thing we haven't explained about Caspian. Caspian had 50 wives that most of them are like assassins for him. Gwyn is like the favorite wife, and she's like a bodyguard and assassin to him. No one knows this, of course, right? It's all a secret, but if you ever get close to Caspian, Gwyn's going to stab you. So her birthday's coming up, so Caspian's hiring a bartender for that. We kind of get an inkling that this banquet is coming up for that. Siegfried then convinces Ludwita to become his apprentice, right? So this witch in the camp who has been has a rivalry with him, he manages to convince her to become his apprentice instead. Kind of redirects that energy. And then Cantarius makes an important decision. He decides to redeem Caspian instead of killing him. Cantarius has dinner with Caspian and admits that he was here to kill him, but wants to become friends instead. Right, so Cantarius and the Crow Inquisitors have been going around the desert righting wrongs. And so they came here and because Caspian was being a tyrant, right? And Cantarius' original plan was kill Caspian, right? Solve the problem. But he decides, I want to do something different this time. Let's try to redeem this man. So Ulrich, who is returned from getting the strong Iris part of the cult set up in the north, he does his own politicking in the midst of this dinner, planning on overthrowing Caspian. The Crow Inquisitors agree to help White Sea by building a new section of the city walls. So, they come to an agreement. Cantarius admits, I'm here to kill you, but I don't want to kill you. Let's be friends instead. How can we help? Sort of a thing. And then maybe Cantarius will have an in with Caspian to redeem him. So then Siegfried meets up with an old flame of his, as well as his old apprentice. The old flame, Ixisa is her name. She has the intellectual discipline and agrees to work with him to induce enough change in Ludwita so that she gains the influential discipline. Basically, the way magic works in the setting is you have enough traumatic change happen to you, and there's a chance that you get magic. And so Siegfried's like, hey, my new apprentice needs magic. Let's go meet a friend of mine and we'll get you magic. Meanwhile, a local warlord, a woman named Vashri, comes to find Siegfried, who has wronged her. Right, so she shows up in White Sea. Caspian negotiates with her, and Vashri runs into Kasim, Caspian's mercenary, and everyone discovers they are siblings. They reunite, and then Caspian negotiates with Vashri to ensure her loyalty to him, and he ropes her into attacking Iro at Northkeep with the strong. Right, so continuing to gain allies. Siegfried, who has been avoiding the palace because of Vashri, teaches Mirfried the theory of the 9 disciplines, so he's continued to make this sentient meerkat powerful. We also discover that the meerkats have been stealing things from the people of White Sea. Siegfried then meets with Uvana and Ludwita in the lab to make a meerkat into a living gold being, right? So they're experimenting on meerkats in different ways, and the next step was make a meerkat into the same sort of thing that Caspian wants to be. Sometime later, Gwyn's birthday banquet begins, for which Caspian has invited various foreign dignitaries with the intent of convincing them to work with him as Overking, right? So he wants to kind of become the tyrant of the whole region now. Cantarius tries to schmooze one of Caspian's wives, but she is distracted and he fails to do so. Caspian then toasts and drinks poisoned wine. Someone tries to assassinate him again, but he spends a persona point to redirect it. So if you're familiar with Burning Wheel, you can spend a persona point, which is a reward you get in the game, to redirect the narrative away from your death. So instead of killing him, the poison only wounds him, and most of the guests get poisoned as well. Cantarius notices something weird about his drink and refrains from drinking it himself. Caspian then shuts down the room to make sure no one escapes. Cantarius manages to find the culprit of the poisoning, one of Caspian's wives. In the chaos, Siegfried manages to overtax himself with his magic and gets put into a coma. The wife that has been accused of the poisoning commits suicide to avoid being found out. Caspian attempts to negotiate with the foreign dignitaries that he invited to the banquet, but they refuse to work with him, so he poisons them all instead. Caspian goes to Siegfried to inquire about becoming a living gold being, right? Like, how is this going? I saw the meerkat. Like, how are we going? How are we doing? Siegfried says it's possible, but he needs more power than he currently has to pull it off, evidenced by his magical coma earlier. I won't go into the details, but basically he had a type of magic that wasn't going to be as helpful if he was going to try to do the thing that Caspian wanted him to do. So he needs a different power source. We do a time skip there. Some time passes while Siegfried recovers, and Cantarius goes to see Siegfried to ask him if there's any stories of an ancient power or artifact in White Sea. So Cantarius starts to get disinterested in all the politics stuff, and he's like, you know what? Maybe I need to focus my energy on other things. What about this demon stuff that we have been dealing with? Siegfried tells him that there's a demon artifact below White Sea, right? So he does a roll to figure this out. But then Siegfried tries to dissuade Cantarius from seeking it out. Cantarius asks how he knows so much about demons, and Siegfried says he's consorted with them before. Cantarius asks if the power would be useful to him, and Siegfried says if he's willing to accept the risks. Cantarius says, let's go. Meanwhile, Ulrich walks in on Cantarius and Siegfried talking about demons, and he gets suspicious, but manages to be put off for now. Iris returns and informs Caspian that he has taken control of Tauren's mercenaries, killed the former Holy Knight, and then captured Northkeep and killed Ero. Right, so this neighboring Serrano lord that was causing Caspian trouble, he sends Iris and the cult members there to go deal with it, and Iris over delivers, and now he's in charge of Northkeep, and he's not going to give it to Caspian. He says he has claimed Northkeep for his own and has only returned to reclaim his remaining cultists. He also insults Cantarius and implies that he will be taking all the Crow Inquisitors with him when he leaves. Cantarius challenges Iris for control of the Crow Inquisitors. Vashri complains to Caspian about not getting Northkeep and tells him to deal with Iris. Caspian then plans to kill Iris with poison. Siegfried is confronted by Ulrich about the demonic activity he and Cantarius were talking about earlier, and is hauled off towards the dungeons before Siegfried manages to convince him that he wants to take the demon away from here, and he's not going to endanger Whitesea. Ulrich decides to come along with him to make sure that this is the case. Siegfried uses corruption, one of the stats he had, to contact the demon and find its location. Basically, did weird dark magic-y stuff. They meet Cantarius at the Temple of Foreste, where he went to speak with Theo about stepping down as leader of the Crow Inquisitors. They all speak to the matriarch of the temple and convince her that there is a demon in her basement and they need to deal with it. Theo joins them as they head downstairs. Siegfried gets them into the secret chamber, eerily identical to the chamber where the orb Alphonse acquired was. Let me emphasize that again. Siegfried gets them into the secret chamber, eerily identical to the chamber where the orb Alphonse acquired was. There you go. Theo prays to Foreste to ask if he should take the amulet sitting on the pedestal in front of them, and she says it's up to him. It may be dangerous, but it's his decision. Right, so Foreste is all about free will and whatnot. Theo decides to go for the amulet, and Ulrich tries to stop him, but fails. Theo touches it and gains magic, and almost gets possessed by a demon, but manages to resist it with a deeds point. Siegfried brushes the amulet intentionally while helping Theo up and gets himself possessed, which was his plan all along. Right, he needs a new power source, and he thinks this demon might be it. He manages to remain in control of his faculties, but gets called on it, and they all realize he's been possessed. Ulrich stalks towards Siegfried, intent on killing him, while Siegfried tries to talk him out of it. He fails, and Ulrich caves his head in, and then gets possessed by the demon. Cantarius uses a deeds point to intimidate Ulrich, and the demon... Cantarius uses a deeds point to intimidate Ulrich and the demon to flee Whitesea. Theo gathers the priestesses up and prays to Foreste to resurrect Siegfried, and does so. He succeeds. Theo tells Siegfried to do some research on how to kill demons. Apparently, he's all in on this stuff with Cantarius too. And then Cantarius and Theo have a talk about the former, Cantarius, stepping down and Theo fighting Iris instead. Theo agrees, right? So Cantarius has decided, you know what? I need to go be a demon hunter now. Theo, you fight Iris and you be in charge. Siegfried then speaks to Theo about getting Foreste as a power source, right? So he needs a new power source. The demon didn't work out, so what about Foreste? Theo tells him he's on his own. Siegfried then speaks to the matriarch, and she grills him with questions about who he truly is. Siegfried convinces her he's being genuine about all of what he's doing. And the matriarch gives him some priestesses to help him bargain with Foreste for power. So there's a whole thing going on here where like Siegfried is like secretly 500 years old and not actually an old man, and that'll be more relevant later, but that does happen here too. Let's see. Siegfried becomes a favored, which is a type of magic user that gets their power from a god. And then he asks Foreste if it will be okay if he makes Caspian into a living gold being. Right, because he needs to be able to do this, and so he's like, I need your power to do this. Is this okay? Like, will you allow me to do this? She says yes, but adds a twist of her own to the thing he's going to do to Caspian. Siegfried goes to Caspian, turns himself back into a young man with a physical discipline, right? So he's like, I was actually a young man all along. I have the physical discipline. I'm 500 years old. I'm a magic user who can do anything. And then he succeeds. He turns Caspian into a living gold being, a golden god. Caspian's men set up an arena outside the city with a box seat for Caspian and a half circle for each side of the cult surrounding a patch of dirt for a fighting ring, right? This is where the Theo and Iris are going to fight for dominance of the cult. Caspian reveals his new form and tells his people to get the last meals of the combatants ready. Basically, the plan here is he's going to set up a last meal, and he's poisoned Iris's cup of wine. That's part of this last meal, so that Iris will die. Iris waits for Kentarius at the meal, and then Theo shows up saying that Kentarius has stepped down, and now he's going to fight Iris. Iris insults Theo, and Theo walks off without touching the meal, right? Goes to make his own preparations without doing this. Because Theo doesn't know Caspian's plan here to poison Iris. Iris insults Theo, and Theo walks off without touching the meal. One of Caspian's men tries to convince Iris to do a toast with a poison wine, right? Like, still drink the wine, but he fails, and Iris walks off. Theo prays for aid for Fereshte before the fight, and then Theo and Iris fight, and Theo wins with flying colors. Iris curses him and is dragged off to be tended to. Theo makes a speech to try to unify the Crow Inquisitors, and he fails. He thinks they're unified, but tensions are still under the surface. Kentarius goes to challenge Caspian and try to get him to change his ways, right? So he's gonna finally be like, you need to redeem yourself. Like, this is it. You need to be a better man. They wax poetic at each other, but don't accomplish much. It was a whole big conversation, and they realized at the end that they couldn't roll to convince each other of anything. It was kind of funny. Kentarius also realizes how alike the two really are. Theo gathers up the strong and the Crow Inquisitors, right, each side of the cult. Caspian is there with his Marasi as well, with his mercenaries, and he tries to get them all fired up for Theo's boot camp, where he's going to remake them all in his image. But Vakam, Luduita's husband, who has been riling up the strong this whole time, denounces Theo, and a portion of the strong start attacking. Caspian, who's been planning an ambush for just this eventuality, starts slaughtering the strong, and Theo tries to stop it with a prayer to Fereshte. He fails, and Fereshte instead makes everyone into super soldiers. Right? So she's super into free will, so why not let everyone be super soldiers and they'll just fight it out? Everyone fights, and the strong are completely destroyed, and the other side of the fight, mainly consisting of Caspian's mercenaries, are untouched. Theo denounces the gods as demons and storms off, feeling betrayed by Fereshte. When Caspian eats dinner in celebration, he realizes that the hunger he's been feeling all day isn't being sated by food, and he storms off to find Siegfried, right? He's like, something's wrong with my transformation. What's going on? Kentarius comes to see Siegfried and asks how he can kill demons. Siegfried lets Kentarius know that he can help him kill demons as long as they are bound together magically, since Siegfried has access to the same magic as the demons. Siegfried succeeds in binding them together, right? So now Kentarius, going into season 4, will have the strange new ability to kill, be able to interact with the same magic that the demons do. Theo then bursts in and demands if Siegfried knows how to kill a god, right? If you can kill a demon, can you kill a god? Siegfried doesn't know offhand, and then Fereshte speaks to Theo and asks, do you really want to kill me? And then leaves him, right? Abandons him. He's like, okay, if you want to kill me, I guess we're done here. You're not my priest anymore. And then Caspian bursts in and demands Siegfried fixes him. Siegfried tells him he has to eat gold now, or else he'll die, right? That was Fereshte's twist on the transformation. Fereshte tells Siegfried that she won't reverse the effects, and that Caspian needs to go talk to her priestesses. Caspian storms out. Kentarius and Theo try to decide what to do about the Crow Inquisitors and this demon hunting thing they want to do, right? They're like, well, we want to go hunt demons now. Like, we don't care about this. What do we do with the Crow Inquisitors? With the remaining Crow Inquisitors, right? Raiden, the man that Kentarius has been trying to redeem, the rapist from the beginning of the season, he comes up behind them and tells them, you need to disband the Crow Inquisitors and tell everyone the truth. Kentarius does so, and the Crow Inquisitors leave. Iris is told of the plan to kill him, and he escapes and rides off into the night, but still gets murdered by Caspian's assassins in the desert. Caspian bursts into the temple of Fereshte and has his Marasi start killing people, claiming that if it's gold that Fereshte has made him eat, it's her gold that he'll eat. The meerkats, as we end, we get some like a bunch of different scenes here as we end. One of the scenes being, we see the meerkats underneath Whitesea in the same chamber where the amulet was, this demon amulet, right? Digging away at some ancient architecture, surrounded by human sycophants, and led by the evil meerkat genius, Mirfried, right? So the meerkats live on. And the last scene we get is we end with Caspian being seduced and then poisoned by one of his wives. It turns out the one who's been behind the assassination attempts all along, before Gwyn, the one assassin wife who is loyal to Caspian, kills her. Caspian ends up, because of the poison, being crippled again in his golden body, and he still has to eat gold to survive. So not a happy ending for Caspian. So that's season 3. Now we go to season 4, and this is where we're going to pick up. So I'll give you a little bit more information to kind of fill in some of the time, because there's going to be a year time skip here between season 3 and season 4. So what happened between them, right? Lastly, we come to the year between season 3 and season 4. What were our characters doing then, and where do we find them when we pick up for season 4? Cantarius, Siegfried, Theo, Antonius, and Ludwita, who all kind of went off together at the end of season 3 to be demon hunters, they all spend their time traipsing around Ceran, attempting to figure out how to kill demons, and tracking down a growing cult called the Harbingers, who seem to have connections to demons. All right, so as Cantarius hunts down these demons, he realizes there are people working with them. Alphonse trains with some tutors in Lucerta, and then traipses across Ceran being a folk hero, and eventually learns more about these same Harbingers himself while he's doing this heroics. Delin recovers from war in Ceran and builds up the Holy Knights, since Shoei and Ceran have called a ceasefire from the war that began. Tensions are still brewing, however, and the war could begin again, this time with Teko and Nuamhati, the other neighboring countries nearby, joining the fight, right? So it could brew into a even bigger war if things go badly here. Theo spends this time struggling with waning faith in the gods, and instead turns to another entity to answer his prayers. We'll find out what that is when we play. Eventually, Siegfried and Ludwita go off to research something in Nuamhati, leaving Cantarius, Theo, and Antonius to travel to Lucerta to confront the Harbingers alone. And that is where we will find our heroes, in Lucerta, tracking down a new cult known as the Harbingers. Come join us on the morning of July 1st for the new episode of Inquisitors. And that's the end of my little script here that I wrote out. So I know that wasn't the cleanest thing in the world, but I needed to get it out there so people who do need a recap and want to listen back can do it. I might try to edit this video at a later date and clean it up and make it a little bit more concise for future listeners. But for now, we're going to post this on the YouTube and get that out there so that people can be caught up on what's happening in Crow Inquisitors when we return on Saturday. So I'm really excited about it. We got some fun stuff in store for you guys. But I think for now, I'll go ahead and sign off, and we'll consider that a wrap for the recap video. Yeah, thanks for hanging with me and listening to the recap. I'm excited to start Crow Inquisitors again. See ya.